Hi everyone, and welcome to my White Mage and Endwalker controller setup. This is the last of the healers, mostly because White Mage has the least amount of buttons, so it makes sense to wait until the others are done to try to allocate its actions accordingly. As with the other videos, feel free to use the description to skip ahead if you do not wish to listen to the explanations. I will also have a reference to the Astrologian setup, since it is the other Regen healer, though in the explanation I may sometimes refer to Sage or Scholar. But first, let's go over some terminology very quickly. Feel free to skip to the next section if you've seen this in another video. I call this the primary cross hotbar. For me, this is set 1. Above is the double cross hotbar. I have this on set 3, and you can configure this in character configuration, hotbar settings, in both the cross and custom section. You access this by double tapping. I do have the expanded enabled. This is by using both L2 and R2, or R2 and L2. I have this set to set 2, and this is customizable in character configuration as well. If you would like to learn more about this, I do have a video specifically on my customization settings, and there should be a card that pops up right now for you to click on if you wish to see it. Other terminology I will be using: a GCD is an action that activates the global cooldown. The game typically calls these spells or weapon skills, though there are a few exceptions. Actions that do not activate the global cooldown are called abilities, once again with a few exceptions. They are also called OGCDs, which means off the global cooldown. So let's take a look at our job actions. Cure. Every single one of my healers has their initial GCD heal on the left side of the primary. This is because the right side is my preferred side, and actions I cure don't get used as much and thus do not deserve to be on the right. Medica. AoE GCDs go on the expanded because they do not need to be seen, as they have no cooldown and since no targeting is necessary. They do not need it to be on the primary. Raise and Swiftcast. All healers, and of course Summoner, have their Resurrection and Swiftcast on the double cross hotbar. This allows Swiftcast cooldown to be visible while still being in a low priority area. Cure 2. This will go opposite Cure. This makes a weak heal, strong heal association while still reminding you that these are GCD casted heals. Regen. The single target regen goes on the right side. Since it is instant, it has a higher value as it is more usable with abilities and thus has more mobility. It goes on the bottom. Cure 3. Another AoE GCD heal. There is no equivalent to Astrologian, but it can go on the bottom, while Medica 2 goes on the top. This allows Medica 2 and Medica to match up with Astrologian suspected Helios and Helios. Afflatus Solace. Afflatus Solace is a single target GCD heal, but it will not go on the left side. Its instant activation means it benefits to being on the right side, like Regen. Dia and Glare 3. Our single target damage attacks need to be on the right side since it is the side I favor and they are used very frequently. Afflatus Misery. This one was actually a bit tricky to place. Part of me wanted it to be up top like Sage's Pneuma and Astrologian's Macrocosmos, but those actions do both the heal and damage. Misery is just damage. I typically put the healer's AoE damage on the primary on the left. Misery will go on the bottom, and since we're talking about AoE damage, Holy 3. This one goes on the top to match with Gravity. If you haven't seen my other healer videos, the reason I keep the AoE damage on the same bar that most of the single target healing actions belong to is because of dungeon pulls. You will often go from your AoE damage to then healing your tank, so while I do put AoE on the expanded for the tanks and most DPS, it just makes more sense for healers not to do that. Instead, the healers have their AoE heals on the expanded alongside other role or job specific actions. Afflatus Rapture. The last of the AoE GCD heals, it nicely goes on the last action spot in the expanded. That means both the single and AoE versions can be used as mobility actions if needed. Limit Break and Roll actions. In general, there is Limit Break. I place this in the same spot for all of my jobs on the left side on the double cross hotbar. This is what I consider to be one of the most inaccessible spots to hopefully reduce accidental usage. Repose might be a GCD technically, but it's only used for very specific circumstances. As such, it doesn't deserve to follow my GCD rules and will go on the expanded, on the D-pad, because I don't really need to see it, and the action slots can be used for more important actions. Asuna. I used to have Asuna on the left side of the double-cross hotbar, and realized it was not great in content where multiple people needed to be Asuna'd in a row, so now it's on the expanded. It's fine on the D-pad since you have to target a party member anyway. Lucid Dreaming. This is a resource ability since it gives MP. I like to put resource abilities on the double-cross hotbar, on the top and bottom. This one goes on the bottom. Swiftcast was already talked about with Resurrection, so we can skip it. Surecast goes on the right double-cross hotbar on the D-pad. This ensures you can see the cooldown, have strong muscle access to it because it's on the right side, and my build once again favors the right, but still try to prevent accidents by placing it on the D-pad. Rescue can be a powerful tool, but it has very limited use due to its long cooldown. It can also be really inconvenient if it's used by accident, so I definitely want it on the double-cross hotbar on the left side on the D-pad, just like Limit Break. Back to our job actions, we can now go into our abilities. Presence of Mind. While White Mage does not have a party damage buff, it does have a self buff that is usually executed during party buff windows to do more damage faster. Therefore, it belongs on the right double-cross hotbar in the spot I normally reserve for such actions. Benediction. There is no action like this for any of the healers. After all, it heals the full amount of the target's HP. Powerful job-specific healing abilities with long cooldowns typically go on the primary's left side, where Astrologian's Sinistry or Sage's Penhaima would be, and that's exactly where Benediction belongs. However, White Mage having so few abilities compared to the other healers means we can also put it on the right too. So regardless of whether you're doing dungeon content or raiding, you can easily go from attacking to healing up your tank. Asylum. This is where we will differ from Astrologian and be closer to Scholar. Asylum will go on the double-cross hotbar. If you would like a macro version, you can also place an additional Asylum on the expanded. Both of these will be on the D-pad up button. Meanwhile, Assize will go on the primary. So compared to Astrologian, Assize is the one being placed like Earthly Star and not Asylum, because of the effect being an big AoE heal at once. Thin Air. Resource abilities typically go on the double-cross hotbar's right side on the action buttons either on the top or bottom. Since Lucid is already on the bottom, this will go on the top. Tetragrammaton. This single target healing ability will go on the primary's D-pad on the left. Divine Benison is a single target shield that belongs on the primary's right side. There is another single target shield, Aquaveil, which will go on the same spot but on the left side. This also matches the single target shields for Astrologian perfectly. Overall, this makes Tetra, Assize, Divine Benison, and Aquaveil fairly similar to Sage and Scholar setup as well. Going from one healer to another should not be too confusing. Plenary Indulgence. This is an AoE healing bonus. It will go on the primary's left side to match with Assize because they are both AoEs in a sense. This heal does require that you then use GCD heals, which is similar, though not exactly the same, but similar as Astrologian's Horoscope. Temperance, White Mage's only party mitigation ability. I typically put party mitigation on the double cross hotbar's right side on the D-pad, either on the left or right. If only one exists, like for White Mage, it goes on the right. Liturgy of the Bell. This extremely long cooldown will go on the double cross hotbar. Since it requires damage to be taken in, it's somewhat similar in concept to Astrologian's Macrocosmos and will therefore share the same spot. General. Sprint doesn't go on any cross hotbars, at least not for my setup. Instead, you can set the right click in, also known as R3, to do a macro and place it there. General actions do not have action queuing, so there is no queuing loss from using a macro. You can place it on a regular hotbar if you want to see the cooldown. This is the only action I have on a regular hotbar for visibility purposes. The last two spots up top are for your elixirs and ethers, or whatever other consumables you wish to have. This is therefore the final version. Since White Mage has far less abilities than the other healers, it's definitely possible to change this and still have something comfortable. I was going through many different versions before I settled on this. There were a few changes from my past setups that may not seem necessary. Plenary, for example, was moved to make it clear that it is not a barrier action. All of the GCD AoE heals were rearranged to be closer to Astrologian's setup. This freed up a slot for Misery to be moved to be paired with Holy, and thus make Misery more accessible in dungeon healing. And that is it for all of the healers. I also want to do a video on controller healing, mostly to address some concern I've seen that Astrologian was too difficult on controller, and I want to have some battle footage to showcase some tips. Of course, the tips are not specific to just Astrologian and can be used by any of the healers, which is why I figured it would be best as a separate video. Technically, I do have a video, maybe even two, on this already, but I want to make a better version. Anyway, I talk too much, so if you want to hit that like button, I will shut up now. Bye bye!